allow for adult recreational use and patients who really need it in the way they need it. It's what we have, and it hasn't been able to, it's non-transparent, it's non-regulatory because of fear of the feds, there's no banking because of the feds, there's no prescription because of the feds, there's no dosing standards because of the feds and because of the state. And so it's the reaction, I think, of what people reasonably know of their own experience and their family's experience of the medicinal use, of their preference to use it over some other drug, either recreationally or medicinally. And it's what we have. My hope is that now we're acknowledging that it hasn't worked, and the prohibition policies we haven't worked. We're going to move to a place where we can take people who are just recreational adult users out of that medical system. And we'll have movement on the federal level. Some of what the initiative that's on the ballot in California, how it does touch medical, it gives some of the tax revenue to medical research in California, $2 million a year. It gives some patients privacy protections to patients that don't exist, who are cardholders. But once we move, we can move folks who are recreational users who don't want to be medical users out of it. We can make it so doctors are no longer having to decide for the patients, like, well, I don't know if you really need it, but I also don't want you arrested, so here's a recommendation. And we can actually hopefully get some movement on the federal level to find out what patients really need and how it best benefits them, and help a lot of people who probably never thought to use it or never even tried to use it, but would greatly benefit it for some conditions we don't even know about and haven't discovered yet. So it's people are skeptical, but the system was created.
The assertion that the federal government has prevented research is factually inaccurate. For the last decade, the University of California at San Diego, under legislation enacted by Senator Vasconcellos, has been doing research on marijuana. The other piece that I think would be helpful to the medicalizing of medical marijuana is if medical marijuana recommendations were tracked under the cure system, just like all other controlled substance recommendations.
I just want to add, I don't think this is the answer that the questioner was looking for, but it's something that I'm very proud of. The Water Board takes a neutral stand on marijuana, and we are looking at just the environmental issues. But our priority currently is to provide safe and clean drinking water to those in the state that don't have it. So we've been shipping clean water to cities that have run out of water, and we've had wells going dry, and so that has been our commitment over the last couple of years, and it's something that I just wanted to share with everyone.
So just really quickly, I have experience with family members who use medical cannabis. I have an aunt who has late stage MS, and we have to accept the reality she's going to die because of this disease, but it is alleviating some of the pain and some of the issues that go on with that. So really believer that it can help. I agree with Eduardo, it needs to be further tested. We need more research with all the cannabis. So that's a big issue. And just to let you know, as someone who watched the legislative process, believe me, patients' rights were always at the forefront. Those were always discussed. And, maybe not by everybody, but the folks who are working, staffing these bills, and the members were definitely had that in the back of their mind. So that was something that was always considered.
I think it's, what the people up here are doing, I know Fiona not only does a lot of good work, but she goes out and networks and is transparent about what she's doing. She's educating people. And Nate does the same thing, and John Lavelle with his information about what's going on around the state. It's just spreading information. The laws have caused the problem. It takes about as much work to produce a pound of tomatoes as it does a pound of pot. A pound of tomatoes is $4, a pound of pot is $4,000. The reason is because of the risk. That's the problem. And here's where we are to address it. There's a perspective about, for example, marijuana dispensaries, how far they should be from this or that, or what's going to go on around the dispensaries. There's a dispensary near where I live that sells guns, hard narcotics, and liquor, and it's full of children. And it's called Walmart. We accept that. we accept that it's safe to dispense those kinds of things with children there. But then there's this other perception about marijuana. Well, if this is in my neighborhood, what's going to happen with this or that? There are, many people are unaware that there are lots of distance regulations and all kinds of regulations all over the country. I just read about them last night, about liquor stores and bars and different kinds of things. And they're all, they seem reasonable to me. And the things that are going on with marijuana have been unreasonable. So there are people that are, it's just not working. And so thank you everybody here for addressing these problems and trying to do something about it.
So we're going to go back to the audience for questions.
How you doing? My name is Michael Snow. Just want to say start off by saying thank you for your time and effort regarding these issues that a lot of us in this theater are passionate about. My question is, where is the state of California and law enforcement agencies with, given the likelihood that, okay, the adult recreational use will be implemented, where are they at with consumption laws and whatever regulation is similar to alcohol use? If anyone can shed any light on that.
Well, I think first, the assumption that the Parker Initiative will pass is open to question. Let me tell you some internal polling that I've seen on the issue. 35% of Californians will walk through the snow, sleet, and hail to vote yes on the Parker Initiative. 31% of Californians will walk through that same inclement weather to vote no on the Parker Initiative. The rest of the electorate is up for grabs, and experience suggests that with a ballot measure, if its first poll is not at about 65%, if there is a funded campaign against the ballot measure, its chances of passage are diminished. So let's put aside the assumption that it will pass, and even with an imbalance in expenditures. For example, in Ohio, their ballot measure is very similar to the Parker Initiative in that it contemplates a big business, big tobacco-like model. In Ohio, the yes side outspent the no side 12-1. Yet Ohio voters rejected their initiative 65% to 35%. So that piece is up for grabs. Now, with respect to consumption laws, there isn't a lot of room to do much because the initiative pretty much ties the hands of either state or local government in regulating consumption. Let me give you a contrast with alcohol. Alcohol is legal in this state, but Everclear, which is pure grain alcohol, is not sold legally in this state. There's no such parallel to have any consumption limits on butane hash oil, which can be as high as 96% THC. So we're not going to be able to address those issues were the Parker Initiative to pass. Whether or not it does is distinctly up to the voters. Both sides will be well-funded. The yes side will be more well-funded than the no side, but both will be sufficiently funded to have real campaigns.
On the issue of consumption, that is an issue that we are very, very, very much aware of. I think one of the biggest feedbacks I got from some of the other states is sort of they now have what they call first world pot problems, like where do we smoke all this newly legal weed? Because it's very limited. And so as it is, I know right now with the initiative, local governments have the ability to determine what they want it to set their own rules, if they want to allow local events, or if they want to create their own licenses. The regulatory agency and the MMRSA has the ability to create additional licenses as they see need as well. So if there is a need for those, like a private club or consumption area, they look at the numbers and determine, yeah, we actually do need this. The regulatory agency will have the ability to create that license. Oh, and just to address the industry in Ohio issue, that was also an off year. So when you run an initiative in a time when only people come out to vote for a county, so somebody who's running for a county office, it's going to be way less, which is why Ohio took the hit it did. It's the initiative as it's drafted now isn't drafted to give any one group any sort of power like the Ohio initiative was. So there's a lot of different aspects of that.
Yeah, so, like Nate said, this is a presidential year, and as we saw in 2008, a lot of the young people actually came out to vote, right? Gay marriage was on the ballot, parental rights, as well as the president, and I managed to get high-speed rail into the college campuses so that the college students were actually excited about it. And high-speed rail at the height of the recession in November 2008 passed with 53% of the vote, right? The young people don't ask, can we afford it? How long is it going to take to get done? They just want it now. So to the extent the young people are going to be an influence in this election, I think, they are going to come out, and history has showed that. I just want to give kudos to San Francisco Supervisor Scott Wiener. He actually had the vision and forethought to plan for San Francisco in case it does pass, that San Francisco wants to be prepared because they're going to hop off a plane, right? And they're going to want to go to San Francisco or LA, and they're going to have the same problems that they had in Colorado, where do we go? And we fought to have a seat at the table at this San Francisco Cannabis, is it called commission? Task force. And Tim went to the first meeting, so maybe you can just give us a little briefing on what you guys are going to talk about and what's going to happen.
Yeah, it was the first meeting. Part of it was just an introductory meeting, finding out, I believe there are 22 different seats on the task force. Definitely consumption was one of those issues that were brought up, actually a number of times during that 3-hour meeting. We're going to deal with a whole host of issues, taxes, local planning, access to youth. So a variety of issues will be dealt with that task force. And I commended everybody for the foresight, because that is amazing that if the adult use initiative is passed, San Francisco will have a plan. And that is everything. As Fiona mentioned, we were in Colorado. We learned about their issues, especially with consumption. Same thing. Basically, you cannot smoke cannabis anywhere in Denver. So what happened is you had an issue where folks bought edibles and went to the hotel room, and then they weren't used to the edibles and had certain negative side effects, and then you've got a whole host of issues with lawsuits from hotels. You got a lawsuit in the state of Nebraska, Colorado. There's just a lot of issues, and I think the task force is going to deal with those issues in a thoughtful way.
Nate touched on this, but I just want to address a couple issues here. One, Ohio, which I think is a fun boogeyman to point to, but I just have to address it because it's just absolutely false that the Adult Use of Marijuana Act's licensing structure is anyway like Ohio. Ohio was a constitutional amendment to the Ohio Constitution funded by 10 funders. It wrote into the Constitution that those 10 funders got cultivation licenses in the states, and they were the only ones who would hold those licenses. Now, that's how all the people who even support legalization in Ohio felt, and that failed. The AUMA does not give any individual person any guarantee of licensing whatsoever. It's a completely open licensing process. It does give some preferences based in policy, like people who get a medical license under the regulations that are being rolled out now will get favorable consideration or priority. People who are residents of the state of California will get priority. There's a specific anti-monopoly provision in there so that a license should be denied if it's going to create a monopoly in one holder. And there are certain categories of small licensure that will get additional sort of benefit of holding a small integrated license in order to encourage and enable smaller farmers to have entry into the market. So there's a number of pieces that are directly contrary to that, and the suggestion that it's anything like Ohio is just wrong. So I want to point that out. The second piece I want to point out about the AUMA and related to other passes is the funding part. So all we've been talking about now on the medical side, there's the sales tax, but they didn't enact a tax measure to come with this. The initiative enacts a tax that's going to raise revenue for all sorts of things, like the environmental restoration. 20% of the revenue goes to that. 20% goes to the localities. So if they allow the businesses, so if they have them, they actually get some funds to ease the burden of the inspections or other things related to having in the localities. It gives money to